today we're going to talk about introverts and extroverts. I myself am an introvert. Sometimes people that know me are surprised by that because I think the common belief is that introverts are always super quiet, always shy, and always trying to like stand off in the back of the room. And while the tendency is definitely there for those traits, that's not always the case. And introverts can be seemingly extroverted in the right environment and with the right company. And I think there's also kind of a misconception that introverts and extroverts are probably kind of bred. It's that behavior trait is groomed as a part of like things that happen to you when you're a child. Maybe some things happen to you when you're young that kind of makes you more introverted because you don't feel comfortable being in front of crowds or whatever. Maybe some extroverts just feel because they were always around crowds and a lot of people, they're more comfortable there. But there's actually some really interesting research to show that you're born with this kind of built into your nervous system. And I learned about this from a book called Quiet by Susan Cain, and it's a really awesome book. Actually, when I read it, it really just totally opened my entire eyes to what being an introvert is. And like a lot of these things I felt about myself, I always felt I was kind of weird for it. But then I read in the book, she kind of reiterated and relayed a lot of things that I had felt about myself. And it really kind of took a weight off my shoulders. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not weird. This is just kind of like common traits that introverts have. So it really helped me feel a lot better about myself and not maybe as like ashamed or self-conscious. But it's a really powerful book. If you're an introvert, I definitely recommend getting it. Even if you consider yourself an extrovert, I think it's an important read because the author really goes into like relationships between introverts and extroverts. There's a book series out there like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. You can say the same thing about introverts and extroverts because we kind of have different ways of communicating. We have very different ways of communicating, different expectations. And so if you're not careful and you don't understand this, an extrovert can be kind of put off by an introvert because maybe they're not being as forthcoming with the information. But a lot of stuff to talk about there. Just pick up the book and read more about it if you're interested. But again, on the experiment that I read in that book, there was a researcher. I can't remember the year. It's probably like the 60s or 70s, a while back. He had a belief that being an introvert and extrovert was kind of wired into your nervous system. You're born one or the other. And he ran this series of experiments. He took a bunch of young babies, probably from a few months old, and basically gave them the same set of like stimulus. So like he would put a very strong smelling thing under their nose or maybe like a loud sound in their ear. So some like strong stimulus, and then he would measure how the babies reacted. And then he actually followed these same babies throughout their life, all the way up until, I can't remember exactly, maybe the 20s, into their 20s, but measured them when they were, 3 years old, 8 years old, retested them, rebrought them in all the way up until they were young adults. And he measured the babies that would respond very strongly to a stimulus. So say he put a strong smell under their nose, and the baby started flailing around and started acting very histrionically and emotionally. And then there's another set of babies where he'd do the same stimulus under their nose, and the babies basically didn't have any reaction at all. And he followed these people throughout life, and then also gave them questionnaires as they got older to kind of measure their level of introversion and extroversion. And what he found, and this surprised me, is that the group of babies that had the strongest reactions to the sights and the smell tests when he gave them, those were the babies that ended up growing up to be introverts, while the babies that almost didn't have any response to this very strong sensation or very strong stimulus, these grew up to be extroverts. And when I read that, I was like, well, that's kind of surprising because, kind of common sense, you would think the babies that are more like outgoing or making a lot of reaction would probably be the extroverts. But what he found out was that introverts actually are just highly sensitive to different kinds of stimulus. So basically, it's like everything is cranked up a little bit more as far as sights and sounds and smells. So the nervous system is always being kind of bombarded by the strong sensation. Whereas extroverts actually have the opposite. Like they, can put a very strong smell under their nose, very loud sound, and their nervous system is kind of like, it's kind of like everything's turned down a little bit. So introverts, the reason we, speaking for introverts, like, quiet places is because that sound is magnified to us. So it's just like, it's much more stimulating to our nervous system. Whereas an extrovert that loves crowded places, wants to be on Bourbon Street, wants to be in the middle of it, because their nervous system is, it's already quieted down. So they need that level of stimulus just to notice something. So it's not that there's anything wrong or right about either one. It's just, you're kind of born with this built into your nervous system. You're attuned to either being very overstimulated very easily, and that's an introvert, or you need a lot of extra stimulation just to feel something, and that's typically an extrovert. So when I learned about that, I was like, makes total sense. That's why, if I am in a busy place with a lot of people I don't know, it's kind of overwhelming, and like I prefer to be in a smaller group of friends. Or if I am out in some, if I'm going to Mardi Gras or something, I need some alone time after that to recharge. And that's really where the difference between introverts and extroverts lies. Where do you feel more recharged? Do you feel like your batteries are recharging if you're in a quiet place, maybe with a couple of friends or reading a book? Or do you feel like your batteries are being like charged up when you're in this big noisy environment? And I think most people probably kind of already know where they fall on that spectrum, but understanding that really helps you know where it's okay to feel that way, and it's not, like I said, wrong or right. It's just how we're wired. So again, the book is called Quiet. I believe the subtitle is The Powers of an Introvert in a World That Can't Stop Talking. So it's a really good book. Pick it up, and that's all I got for today. Take care, y'all.